Syracuse football and questioning the first year coaches, which was ludicrous. These guys are showing up and showing out. Robinson has the defense balling, and Nixon has the offense rolling. Syracuse is definitely onto something with these two guys, and hopefully we can keep these guys for more than just this year and maybe a couple of years. But these guys are out. I can see it. Their coaching skills will be pursued after this year because they're making changes, and Nixon offense is wide open. So he can possibly be up for a head coaching job or a higher paying job at a bigger school. But we have to try to pay to keep these guys because they're on to something. It would be sad to see the system go away in 1 year because Nixon and Coach Robinson on the defensive side are two great coaches, and you could see it on the field when they were playing Georgia Tech. They made on-field adjustments in game, and it totally changed the game. They put Fidel in a standing position at linebacker, and it offset the game. He could bull rush through the middle, or he can play the outside. So they're showing the athletic ability of Fidel Diggs, who can play multiple positions, and that will be a value for him coming up in the NFL draft. And he has the speed to turn heads. Fidel Diggs is a great player, and the defense was doubted because of last week because people don't know football and they don't know the MEAC is a good conference. And those other conferences, teams are tough now. Western Michigan, Central Michigan, Toledo, and sometimes Kent State is tough. Ohio always been tough. Ohio is a state with a lot of football players, so you can count on them having a good football team because they can stay in-house and get players. So you can't sleep on those teams. And Northern Illinois just beat Notre Dame. Bowling Green took Penn State to the wire. So you can't sleep on these teams. These teams been tough for years. They don't have the all-around talent, but they do have talent to compete and sometimes get the victory. So Syracuse win shouldn't be looked down on against Ohio because they're a top-tier team and they win 10 games in their conference and they won their bowl game. So you can't doubt those guys. And everybody looked ahead to Georgia Tech, and look what happened. They beat Georgia Tech and could have beat them handedly, but made a couple of mistakes in the first half, letting Georgia Tech off the hook by letting the quarterback score on two broken plays. Then they scored later in the game. And if special teams was cleaned up, it would have been a bigger deficit. But you can't go on ifs. It turned out the way that it turned out. Syracuse played good because they controlled the game for the whole entire game, and you have all kinds of players stepping up. Barry Buxton on defense, Fidel Diggs stepped up, and the true freshman Barnes came in and played this position and had a couple pass breakups as a true freshman. And Morale Watson, another freshman who was showing up and deserved praise because he's definitely holding his own as a freshman, and for years to come, we can see big things out of him. Syracuse had other players. Kevin Jobity looked it pretty good out there. McDonald atoned for his missed tackles last week. And the team all around stepped up in tackling this week, holding Georgia Tech for under 200 yards. And last week they let Ohio running back run for 200 alone. They definitely shut Georgia Tech down. The score doesn't really show how the game really went because Syracuse controlled the whole game. Offense was spectacular. Multiple guys were getting receptions and are stacking up in yards. McCord is looking good because he's seeing all receivers. You have 5 receivers that are over 70 yards, so that's a good thing. And you have some that's just under 50 yards. So multiple guys are shining and showing up on the offensive side. And the 2 running backs looked good, catching up the backfield and running on the ground. One has 74 yards all out of 2 games, and the other has 180 in 2 games. So both of those guys are looking good, and they both have receiving yards. And I'm the receiving yards and top 10 in receiving yards out of the receivers and their running backs. So both of those guys are looking good, catching up the backfield and plus. But I was surprised not to see Usain Willis. But maybe they're depending on redshirting him and letting him play in only 4 games. And that's not a bad thing because him, Jakari Williams, Luke Carney, all those guys will be freshmen together, and whoever wins that quarterback job will be the future of the program. So you need a top tier running back who can carry the team if one of those guys don't pan out at quarterback, or if they do need a little bit of help from the running game. So he'll be a plus in the upcoming years. That's Usain Willis. And wide receiver Ross. Both Rosses didn't play much in this game, but we're looking forward to seeing them in the future because they earned their playing time in practice. That's why they're on the depth chart. So we can only wait for those guys. And the team will be much stronger in a couple of weeks when we get our starting linebacker back. So Syracuse is looking good, but I think they'll look better and be more stronger and have more confidence when Wax returns to the playing field. But both corners, the backup and the starters, looked good and played solid. Didn't give up too many big-time plays or get beat over the top. So Syracuse is definitely atoning for last week's mishaps. And this week, they have a bye. So there's not going to be much to talk about, but we can go over this game and talk about players' potential in the future. We have a couple freshmen who still have a couple jitters, but when they get like a Holy Cross game or see, depending on how the Stanford game go, if they can get out there and get adjusted to the collegiate game, there'll be a plus down the road. But they just have to get that one game where they can get in and get their feet wet and get comfortable out there on the field. And that's probably going to come against Holy Cross or depending on the Stanford game. But you can't count Stanford out because I watched film on them. They look pretty tough out there. So we're waiting for the bye week to end so we can have more football talk. But until then, let's go Syracuse.